What's up guys, Technic here, and today's review is all about this guy, the Honor 70. And I'm extremely excited to get this review going because not only is this the global version of the phone, meaning it comes fully packed with Google services, but it is one of the most premium mid-range smartphones pretty much ever because of one main reason. That being the fact that it is the world's first smartphone to house Sony's brand new 54 megapixel IMX800 main camera sensor. Other than full Google support and an incredible new main camera, the Honor 70 is littered with fantastic specifications, such as a 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera, 2 megapixel depth sensor, 120Hz 6.67 inch dual curved OLED display that boasts 1920Hz pulse width modulation dimming, not to mention it also packs in an extremely large 4800 mAh battery and very fast 66 watt wide charging. This is Technic and this is my full review of the Honor 70 Global Edition. The Honor 70 comes in 4 main color variants. You can pick it up in Icelandic Frost, Emerald Green, Midnight Black, or the color version that I have with me here today, known as Crystal Silver. The Crystal Silver really does look stunning. It's almost like sun rays smashing down onto a cluster of diamonds. It's a very elegant aesthetic, I guess you could say kitsch, classy kind of look. I really do like how it shifts in color. We do have a 4800 mAh battery packed inside here, 66 watt wired charging. Not to mention, we also have the Snapdragon 778G plus 5G CPU, which has an Adreno 642L integrated GPU, LPDDR4X RAM, UFS 2.1 storage. Not to mention, it also comes packed in with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and NFC. It does have a glass front and glass back, but unfortunately the frames are made of plastic. It comes in at just 7.91 millimeters thick and is just 178 grams in weight. And talking about the star of the show, that being the 54 megapixel IMX800 1 in 1.49 inch main camera sensor. We also have an ultra wide, that being a 50 megapixel sensor with a field of view of 122 degrees. And last but not least, well, pretty much least, a depth sensor that coming in at 2 megapixels. The 50 megapixel ultra wide looks fantastic. Binning it down to 12.5 megapixel using 4:1 pixel binning looks even better. 54 megapixel main looks great too, though we do have a weird 4.32 to 1 pixel binning, giving you a 12.5 megapixel resolution. 2 times zoom, 5 times zoom, all digital, of course, no telephoto here, and 10 times zoom being the max doesn't necessarily look okay. 2 times looks all right, and the portrait mode looks pretty fantastic in the background, but the foreground just isn't too detailed. We do have a portrait mode of me over here, but this time around it actually does a great job since there's actually a person in the subject. And when it comes to close-up and personal shots, the ultra-wide camera does double up as a macro and it looks fantastic. There's a new video mode this time around known as solo cut mode, and it is capped at 1080p and 30 FPS. I'm using ultra-wide at the moment. It is tracking me right now. There's a block over my face on the phone, which you can't see. And then once you're done, it shows you this result. And then it saves a second clip, that being this result over here in a vertical clip. And this is not the person moving that's holding the phone. This is actually AI working its magic here and focusing on me. This is apparently a new breakthrough in terms of vlogging. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But we also have 1080p 30 FPS using the main over here, so we can use the main camera sensor too. And once again, it does a pretty fantastic job. I think it is still fresh, it is still new, so they do have some work to do with it, but I really do like the concept of it and I can't wait to see where this goes in the future. We of course also have 1080p 60 FPS using the main camera, back video recording. No optical image stabilization over here, but it still looks pretty stable. I was literally riding around on my skateboard. We do have 4K 30 FPS here using the main. Unfortunately, no 60 FPS option when recording at 4K on the main or at ultra wide, though ultra wide is nice and wide, pretty much no distortion on the edges, and it comes out crystal clear, not to mention buttery smooth as well. Recording 4K 30 FPS ultra wide at night doesn't have the best sensor, this ultra wide camera, in terms of low light situations over here, but the main camera recording 4K 30 FPS at night looks fantastic thanks to that wonderful new Sony IMX800 camera sensor. We can also shoot 4K 30 FPS of me at night doing a little trick over here, and I think it actually picks up the subject pretty well and brightens me up quite well. Night mode off over here looks okay. Night mode on doesn't really make much of a difference, maybe to the leaves, but it kind of deletes the detail over there. Using the main sensor, night mode on, once again doesn't make a huge difference, but it still looks pretty classy. Night mode off here, 2x digital zoom, night mode on, not much of a difference, but just taking photos at night overall look great on all the sensors over here, so I'm not really complaining at this price point. It is doing a more than fantastic job. And moving on to taking a portrait of me at night here, I actually think it does a great job. It picks up a lot of the shadows on my face, but it gives a very realistic representation of me. Even taking a portrait shot at night looks pretty great too. The camera sensors on the back of the Honor 70 actually do a better job than what I was expecting for a phone at this price point. And that's pretty much because of that new Sony IMX800 camera sensor. But enough about that, let's talk about the rest of the device. On the right side of the device, we have a power button, just above that a non-split volume rocker, and at the bottom of the phone we have a dual SIM 5G dual 5G standby tray. Unfortunately, no expandable storage this time around, though there is a water resistant seal even though there is no IP certification. We do have a USB 2.0 Type-C port at the bottom, and alongside that is a single downward firing speaker. Unfortunately, the earpiece at the top is not utilized as a secondary speaker. We also have a apparently super clear selfie camera, and it comes in at 32 megapixels with an aperture of f2.4. The 32 megapixel selfie looks fantastic. 8 megapixel looks even better bent down, and portrait looks great too with my sister-in-law over here.
Yo, what's up guys, this is Technic recording a 1080p 60 fps selfie video on the brand new Honor 70. No magic this time around. It's a pretty decent mid-range phone, and I think the selfie video quality speaks for itself. Let me know what you guys think of the video and audio quality. Unfortunately, no 4K when recording with the selfie cam.
1080p 60 fps video recording using the selfie camera at night doesn't do it any justice, but that is because we're recording at 60 fps. As soon as we drop it down to 30 fps, as you'll see right now, things do brighten up quite a lot and all the detail is still packed in there. Unfortunately, no 4K using the selfie camera, which is a bit of a bummer, but this is a mid-range smartphone at the end of the day, so we'll have to forgive it for that. And selfie video recording still looks more than fantastic. Night mode off with the selfie looks okay. Night mode on, not much of a difference over there. Using flash mode off with the portrait looks average, and with the flash mode on does look better. It does brighten things up in the background. It's nice and blurry. The selfie camera does a more than decent job from what I was expecting. I like the fact that the 32 megapixel sensor can actually bin down to 8 megapixels to save storage and look better in turn with AI, which is great. We do have an always on display, not to mention an under display fingerprint sensor. Unfortunately, this one is optical, not ultrasonic like its more expensive brother, the Honor Magic 4 Pro. And unlike its sibling, the Honor Magic 4 Pro, we don't have 3D face unlock. We're stuck to 2D face unlock over here, which utilizes the selfie camera. We do have a 6.67 inch OLED display. It is 20:9 in terms of aspect ratio. It is a dual 58-degree curved dot display. It is a full HD plus resolution panel. It has 1 billion colors, which is 10 bits. It also has 100% DCI-P3 color gamma rating. It supports HDR10 plus content, has 1000 nits of peak brightness, and has a whopping 93.27% screen to body ratio. This is unfortunately not an LTPO display, but it is 120 Hz and does have a dynamic refresh rate option. It does the job as you would expect. Of course, it's not a flagship, so you don't really expect LTPO, but we do have 300 Hz touch sampling rate, which is fantastic to say the least. But the most important thing is that we have 1920 Hz pulse width modulation dimming, as opposed to some of the best around, that being the iPhone 13 Pro Max with 480 Hz. You really can notice a difference over here, and it truly does minimize eye strain, especially when you dim your phone quite a bit at night. When you're, say, reading a book, it really does relieve your eyes quite a bit over time. So it's definitely a phone that you want to look into if that is your cup of tea. Brightening things up, it actually keeps up with the iPhone in terms of brightness levels thanks to that 1000 nits peak brightness. And moving on to the software side of things, we are packed with the brand new Magic UI 6.1 skinned over Android 12. There are full Google Play services support over here, which is fantastic. The overall UI looks great too. And of course, we do have Google Assistant from the bottom left corner, all Google settings within the settings. The Play Store works and comes bundled straight out of the box. And we do have the large folders, small folders. You can shrink them and enlarge them like we saw with the Magic 4 Pro, which is great. I really do love this point of software where you can just tap on an icon within a large folder and you go straight into it. You don't have to open the folder before going into the app. We also have a great drawer over here, great notification drawer, as well as a bunch of different personalization options that we've seen from Honor in the recent past. We do have 8 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM, which can be extended by a further 2 gigs. And we also have a 6nm run Snapdragon 778G Plus CPU. And when bundling that with the in-house performance mode within the battery settings of the phone, we got an AnTuTu score of 553,057 points. 821 points for single core, Geekbench 2,918 for multi-core, and 2,662 in 3D Mark Wildlife. In terms of points, in terms of FPS, it got an average of 15.9, which means that this device has surpassed its predecessor's CPU, the 778G, of course the 778G Plus. Should do better than that, but you got to remember that this chipset is almost a year old now, so it would have been nice to see a newer, fresher CPU in here. Nevertheless, it's still a great CPU, so what does that mean in terms of gaming? So going ahead and opening up our FPS counter thanks to the courtesy of Geekbench Pro. Jumping into our first game here, that being Genshin Impact. Maxing out all the settings in terms of graphics and max FPS, that being 60 FPS. The game is capped at 60, even though the phone can do 120. We'll do high refresh rate games in a minute, but for now we're getting an average of 41 FPS on Genshin Impact, which is a very graphically demanding game. And just to give you an example, the average Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset on my channel, which is actually a flagship chip, got an average of 44. So this budget-friendly 778G Plus chipset is holding its own quite well. Moving on to Real Racing 3 over here, unlimited frames per second cap. We are reaching 120. Many devices out there still cap it at 60, and we're getting an average of 104 FPS, which is fantastic. Min of 91, max of 122, which is once again just below the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 that I've seen on my channel with an average of 120. So good on you, Snapdragon 778G Plus. Moving on to Bullet Force over here, another unlimited frame cap game. We are getting 120 frames per second on ultra graphics and max FPS. 120 is the average, which is fantastic. Min of 106, max of 122. The min of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 was 111 and the max 121. So in some scenarios, it's actually doing better than that. But what about the audio coming from that single down firing speaker? The Honor 70 is one of the most premium mid-range Honor smartphones that has ever entered into the global market. It has one fantastic display, thanks to it getting extremely bright at 1000 nits. Not to mention it is dual curved with very minimal bezels, has 120 Hz refresh rate. Unfortunately, it is fixed, however, though we do have 300 Hz touch sampling rate. And the most important thing about this display is the fact that it comes packed in with a very much flagship feature, that being 920 Hz pulse width modulation. It takes more than decent selfie photos and videos thanks to its 32 megapixel selfie sensor, and while the selfie camera can shoot 1080p video at 60 FPS, it lacks 4K selfie video recording. What does shoot 4K video, however, are the two back camera sensors, that being the main and the ultra wide. They take fantastic video in day and night situations, I must add, but unfortunately the 4K video on both of them is capped at 30 FPS. What is not capped, however, is the flexibility that you have when taking snaps with that brand new Sony IMX800 54 megapixel main sensor. In any lighting condition, it looks absolutely phenomenal. And while its 50 megapixel ultra wide camera struggles a bit in low light, it more than makes up for it in well lit situations, not to mention its fantastic super macro capabilities. One thing to note, however, is that it lacks a telephoto sensor of any kind, but I guess we'll have to forgive it for that since it is very much a mid-range and well-priced smartphone, though we do have a cherry on top, that being the 2 megapixel depth sensor, and it really does add an extra layer of depth when taking portrait shots. It has one stunning design thanks to its visual interpretation of light radiating over diamonds, and inside its classy design sits a large 4800 mAh battery that can be fueled up in no time thanks to its 66 watt wide charging, making it easy for me to recommend the Honor 70 as one of the best premium mid-range smartphones at this price point. I hope that you all enjoyed watching this video as much as the Honor 70 enjoys shining bright like a diamond. This is Tech Nick, and I'll catch you in the next one.